Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for having me. I took German lessons for 7 years in school, and I think I get just 10% more than Max did. So sorry for that. Spiegel got Danish design out in the hallway, so I feel at home. My 12-minute presentation has this headline: Designing for Concentration, Contemplating, and a Non-Fucked Up State of Mind in an Era of Distractions. And hopefully it'll make sense why this is the headline. First, Zetland is 2.5 years old as a newspaper. It's a digital newspaper. So this is just, the stats to know sort of who I am before I dive into the attention question. Today we are, I think, with 25 at the organization as a whole. We got 10,000 and counting paying members who pay. We're not in the Eurozone. Because we're Danes and it's weird. Anyway, it must be 15 euros a month, something like that, to read us and follow us. So that's our business model. This is us on the night when we launched in March 2016. We're a happy crowd. And a stressed out crowd because it's insane to build your own media. We sing every morning at 9 in the office, everyone. We have a thing for singing in Denmark. There's like a folk song tradition. No one else does it in the news business though, but there's something about singing together every morning which makes it so difficult to hate each other. Which is nice because if you're really stressed out building your own media outlets, you tend to sometimes hate each other. So the singing is a good thing for that. Anyways, why did we build Zetland? Why did we founded Zetland? We did it because of this. We did it because we could see that in the attention economy, more and more red dots and birthday notifications and endless news streams grabbed our and not only ours, but everyone's attention. And I think made it difficult to not only have a coherent self, but also a coherent society. If your attention is constantly grabbed by red dots and, look over here, I'm an ad, click at me, sort of things, it just makes it really hard to hold on to a thought, right? It's like we use more and more energy, more and more time to grapple with the information that is pushed in and out of our head, and not having time and energy to actually understand the information that's pushed in and out of our consciousness. So that's make it hard to have a coherent self, I think. Attention, being able to focus, is key to a coherent self as a human being. Second, as a society, if you have news outlets that are built around the notion that grabbing people's attention is key, and what people spend their attention on is a minor detail. That makes it really hard to have a coherent society, to have a public debate that really focuses on the central issues. So, I think there's an evil twin going on, an evil twin thing going on between the attention economy and the platforms that take our attention with stuff that's not useful at all, paired with the media cyclus of news. Today we use in the news business, as we have always done, technology to publish more and more news in a shorter and shorter time. Because we still think, as journalists, that our main purpose is to move information from A to B at the highest possible speed. Once that made sense, when we had the telegraph and it was really expensive for people to move information from A to B, now it doesn't make any sense anymore, because everyone can move information from A to B. So what is journalism's job to be done in this new media era? I think it's not to move some information from A to B, but it's really carefully considering what information to tell about, and to analyze it, and to synthesize it, and to explain the important stuff that's out there, and leave the rest alone. Because if we don't do that, this happens. This already happened. In 1932, Aldous Huxley wrote in Brave New World. Some of you must know Brave New World, right? He wrote, you read it probably in high school, as we do in Denmark, right? Anyways, it's an insanely brilliant book, I think, and it's really worth rereading. Aldous Huxley, he wrote that the kind of politician that we were to fear of the future, which is now, it was not the sort of the Orwellian dictator disciplining people with violence. The kind of the political figure we were to fear of the future was the politician as an entertainer. The politician who would distract with tons of irrelevant information our attention. Oh, that was in 1932, and look who we got here. Anyway, so I think this is not. This is like Max said. This is not. This is really something that we should consider deeply as media, because if we don't consider it deeply and build our media so that we really respect people's attention, then we will tap into this system, and I think we really shouldn't. So at Zetland, we have an ethics of attention, sort of a 3 guidelines that we have in order to designing for time well spent, right? 1, say one thing at a time. I'm going to go back and explain this further. So this is just the headlines. Say one thing at a time. Don't try to say tons of things at the same time on one screen. 2, to get someone's attention is a matter of trust. Live up to that trust. Attention is perhaps what makes us human. The ability to focus, the ability to when our thought wanders and don't want to be here but want to look out of the window, we are as humans able to sort of to grab that attention and pull it back. I think it's a very human feature, and we only have 100% attention, right? So whenever we give someone our attention, it's like Jesus. It's like giving someone a part of your soul, right? It's giving something of the fundamentally human feature of you as a person. And we are to treat attention as that, as really a gift. It makes sense today that attention is worth the same as oil and gold, because it is gold. It is gold. 3, be human. We don't want to use our time and our attention on machines, I think. We want them to use our attention to interact with each other or to interact with ourselves as a human being. Okay, so sounds fancy, right? Lots of big words. So how do we work with this at Zetland? I'll try to do it fast. I could talk for 3 hours, but I don't want to take your attention with that for the next 3 hours. Anyway, first of all, we publish very few articles a day, between 2 and 4, I guess, and they only take, all in all, let's say 30 minutes. Still a lot, but it's not, I once read that New York Times every day publishes what equals the Harry Potter sequel. And I'm like, Jesus, that's really lots of words, right? We cannot read a Harry Potter sequel every day, but we can read 1 or 2 stories. So there's a finishable feature to our product. We don't publish more that you could manage to be that you can manage in your day. Also, we publish on schedule. So there's no need for you to constantly drop in at Zetland or keep your Twitter, your Twitter account open, because we publish every day at 4 in the morning, and our news podcast come out at 4 o'clock in the evening. So you know when it's there. You know when to log on, and then you can just log off and live your life. So I think that's really key. Our layout is calm and really affords immersion. So there's no ads. First of all, our business is not built upon ads, which makes, I think, that's really central, because then our obligation is not towards the ad people to sell ads. It's our obligation is to make great content for our readers. So that's the main relationship at Zetland is between the news desk and the reader. No ads at all, and no hyperlinks. So you don't want to grab someone's attention and 3 sentences afterwards say, hey, there's also another article on my site that you might be interested in. You don't want to do that. At least we don't, and we don't need to, because we don't need to keep people's attention on our site. When they have read a story, and if they liked it, it's fine for us if they log off. In fact, we would want them to do that. Notifications, no red dots, no nothing that sort of pulls your attention into what you could also spend your time on. We have personalized our notification system. So, sorry. No, could you skip back? One more. Anyways, we really try to keep notification at a minimum, and we ask people, our readers, when they log on the first time, when do you want to hear from us? Do you happen to be a person that would like both notifications or emails, or perhaps not? So please consider, when do you want to hear from us, and with what content? Okay. And contribution. So we have. I think I have been. It has only been necessary to delete a comment on Zetland once, which is, I think, not only because we got great members, but also because we really know that in order to have a great comment section that's really that is worth spending your time and attention on. It needs to be like a dinner party, right? There's a host making sure that everyone is heard, and that it's not allowed, it's not well seen to get into that dinner party and yell shit! Exclamation point and leave the room again, right? You don't do that to a dinner party. And why you don't do that? That's because there's certain norms. There's a culture that makes you not do such a thing. So we have really spent a lot of time and energy and to make sure that there's a certain culture in the dinner at the dinner party section. For instance, when we think someone really contributed with a thoughtful comment, or some knowledge, or a great tip for a book to read or something, we highlight that, sort of to signal and to show this is the kind of content that is worth spending time on. Yeah, and people like that. So I think we are as when we design for attention, think about how do you make your product talk with the kind of voice that's worth spending time on. And for us, that means really that everything communicates, right? Not only words, not only pictures, but everything communicate. And I think it's so important that that even the small detail is worth spending time on. Remember this shoe? It's an Air Max. I think it's called. It's from Nike. When it was designed, you know, they now I'm pointing. You can't see anything. Look at the air bubbles in the bottom, right? That's the technology that's used to make it a nice shoe. And when it was designed the first time, the Nike sales team said, "This is not going to sell. You don't want to see how it's built, right? Keep that for yourself, clever designers." But then it of course, sort of it broke a lot of record sales, and it sold a lot. And I think it makes sense because we, as people, we're curious. We want to know how stuff is made. How the thing that we spend our money on and our time on, how that's made. So at Zetland, we really we're super transparent and show how stuff is made. Just another example, you know the Pompidou Center in Paris, built around the same notion, right? That there's not a front stage and a backstage. The backstage is the front stage. Right, so the museum is built. I guess it's a museum, right? It's built so that you can see everything that's usually hide in a building: the elevator, the gas stuff. Everything it's not hidden; it's on the outside. And I like to think that it's the same kind of thinking that that we use at Zetland, sort of showing how this is made. Telling about our doubts, telling about why we chose this story and not that, telling about what's difficult at Zetland. Yeah. And one last thing. Am I using too much time? No? Yeah, perhaps, probably. Just one last thing. This has to do with the thing Max said. Spend time with your readers off screen. And make space for human interaction that does not require a screen. I think that's also a task, a job to be done for news today. So at Zetland we have we make live magazines and meetups with people, and I like to think about it as a sort of a romantic space for journalism, a space where you can where you're in sync with each other, where everyone, like at the Royal Theatre in Copenhagen, where we made one of our live shows, every 1,400 people who attended that event were not online. They had their phone in their pockets. So, and that experience is so rare these days. You know, it's so rare. Having 1,400 people look the same way, experience the same thing, talking about the same thing afterwards out in the bar. It's just magic. And I think we need to, is this a word? Re-magicalize the world a bit. That's also a task for journalism to do today. Dot. One last thing. This is I really think there are an alliance to be built here, an alliance of journalists, of school teachers, of everyone who really cares about how we spend our time. And I have a slogan suggestion for this alliance, and it comes from Annie Dillard, the American writer. She wrote this back in the 80s. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. What we do with this hour and that one is what we're doing. Once you realize that, you don't want to grab someone's attention with the meaningless stuff anymore, I think. I'm not saying that you do that. It sounds like that. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lea. There's a first question right in the back, and the microphone on the way.
Thank you very much for your ideas and everything. Just to get a bit more detail about it, what did you do when you were on stage and when you re-magicalized with your audience and without phones? I mean, was it the typical journalists talk to each other and others listen, or what, I mean, how did you do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks. Okay, there's too much conference thinking today. You know, you meet, you have a panel. I really. This is not right. This what's going on here or anything.
It's about inspiration.
Yeah, okay, good. You know the format. You meet, there's a panel discussion, you have sort of a mineral water in front of you, right? And then you say something to another one, and quite often it's journalists or politicians who speak to each other. And then, people listen. And this is not that. So this is a 90-minute show, I would call it, where we showcase between 9 and 13 fantastic stories about the world we live in. Important stories. So it's short. It's a 3-minute story told from a stage. It's a 10-minute story told from a stage, right? So it's, maybe you could say it's TED Talk meets cabaret. Yeah? So every talk, every story told from the stage is enhanced with a bit of magic. If it's a story about size, then suddenly comes a one-to-one elephant in the background because it's huge and it tells something about the story. And if it's a story about applause, what happens right before an applause is happening, then of course the audience is part of that story, helping to tell the story. So there's always elements of the audience helping tell the story with their mouth, with their bodies, with their hands in the air or something. Yeah, I guess that's the short version. But come see it. It's fun.
How often do you do it?
We do it. It's insane because it's not really worth it because it's one-off, right? And it's expensive to do it, but we do it anyway because we think it's fun and important. So for the time being, we do it twice a year, spring and autumn. Yeah.
More questions for Lea? Yeah.
Hi there. My question would be, how do you sort what's important? So, because the 30 minutes that you actually put out should be the 30 minutes that are enough for 10,000 people, and then they don't have to check Twitter anymore. That's like really a lot of responsibility in a way. And then the next question, with that, would be, what are the most broadcasted topics that you actually broadcast about?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing, isn't that what journalism has always done? Sat down around a table and talked about what is important, and then trying with your knowledge of the world and your way of going about stories, figuring out what is the most important story to put on the front cover, right? So it's a journalistic skill, and not taking that upon you and say, this is our job. It is our job to sit and figure out what is the most important story to tell. What's key to know for our readers? If you don't want to take that obligation to you and just say, okay, we're going to publish a lot, just sort of in order just to try to say something important. I just think it's the wrong way to go about it. Being a journalist and being an editor comes with an obligation, a responsibility to pick the important stories. And we can run from that by saying, okay, but maybe it's not interesting for the reader. Well, then make them understand it's important, right? What was the second question?
Which topics are...
Oh yeah, are the most, the most read or the most... No, so we're not a TV. We're not in video. It's articles. Yeah.
Topics you write about.
Politics, society, culture. So nothing fancy about that, you know. It's the same old in that sense. We just take out all the noise. We're really trying to sort of filter through the noise and say, okay, this huge discussion over here, maybe it's about this. Let us try to explain why that is important. So it's in that sense we are kind of a traditional media, just really trying to not publish noise. I guess you could see it that way.
Do we have a final question? Where was it? There, sorry.
Yeah, hi Lea.
Hi.
Thank you very much for your speech. This year in fall, I had the chance to visit your newsroom with my students, and besides the singing and the overwhelming friendliness, what struck me most was the self-consciousness your newsroom staff had about, having a real impact on journalism. Where does this come from? Is it the Danish media landscape? Where do you take it from? Your happiness and your positiveness for our profession and what it's going to be.
Was I positive about that? I think it comes from running away from the traditional media. Well, I think when you take a step aside and really try to look at what is it that we do in the news business, then you at some point you realize, whoa, we really have a bias for conflict, for instance. We prefer bias, we prefer the spectacle before we prefer, the boring norms of everyday lives that actually constitutes reality for most people, right? So once you see that, you at least for my part, I was like, okay, I can't do that anymore. Let me do something else, and just trying to do something else energizes me, I guess. And then I'm born with sunlight in my veins. In the Nordic countries, there's just two kinds of person: the kind of person that really are depressed by the dark, and the kind of person that sort of denies that it's part of reality. And you have to have that ability, I think.
Well, then, thank you for bringing the sun on stage, Lea. Really good to have you here.